seat. Welcome back. I've missed you guys. It's been a couple weeks since we actually had service, so we're glad you're back. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Brandon, and yes, my head is pink. So if you're here for the first time and you're like, what in the world is this place about? Let me tell you a little story. So over the summer, we were running about 50 or 60 students here on an average night, and I said, man, wouldn't it be awesome if we had 100 students in this building? And so somehow we started talking about, you know, if we had 100 students, that Brandon would just dye his head pink. And so we've been going on and on about that. So 2 weeks ago, you guys showed up here for a regular service. You had 100 students, actually 98, but I gave it to you anyway. 98 students showed up in the building. So you guys did your part, so I did my part. Here it is, pink hair. So awesome. I'm not quite sure what my boss is going to think tomorrow when I roll into work, but we'll just kind of play that by ear. I would like to give a shout out to Courtney Thor for coming up with this absolutely terrible idea. I'm not sure how I ever got talked into this, but it is terrible idea. So if Courtney ever tries to talk you into doing something, if something else happens, just walk away. Just walk away. So for those of you also new here, I just want to tell you I am not an official pastor. I've not been to pastoral college or wherever it is these people go. I'm just a regular guy with a full-time job, but I have a heart for students, and so I kind of do this on the side for fun, mostly because I made a lot of mistakes as a teenager, so if I can help you try to avoid some of the really stupid things I did, that would be really good for you, because I did some real stupid stuff. So tonight we're going to talk about some crazy stuff, and it's going to be tense. So yeah, it's going to be tense, and so this is what I'm asking. So usually we don't get into real tense graphic type of stuff, but tonight it's going to be a little more than you're probably used to. So if you're new here, we're usually not this in your face with stuff, but tonight's kind of a special message. And so the other thing I ask is that you guys just be mature about what we're talking about. Try to keep the snickering, giggling, shouting out to a very minimum. It'll make the message a lot better if you're not just screaming from your seat. So just be mature. That's all I ask. Don't treat it like a high school health class, and everything should be just fine. So tonight's message is really about temptation and sins. And really, temptation leads to sin, and so we're going to talk about what temptation is, and then what sin is, and the kind of the stages of sin. And before we start with that, I just want to tell you that the most important thing is everybody struggles with temptation and sin. They absolutely struggle with it. You are going to struggle with temptation and sin. We, as humans, are a very sinful type of people. Sin tends to be fun and exciting and all these things, and so you are going to be tempted by sin. It's just important that you play it safe. I can tell you that everybody here is some sort of sinner. If you think you are the worst sinner in the room, look to your right or your left. That person's probably out-sinning you 2-1. So rest easy knowing that that person's probably way worse than you are. Just saying. So temptation is kind of a crazy thing, though. Temptation is one of those things that if you don't recognize it's happening, all of a sudden you can be in this sinful situation before you even realize it happened. And it happens so fast, and different people are tempted by different things. So some people are tempted by things they see or things they read or just whatever. So I know there's this example I have of how temptation kind of can sneak in, and sometimes it's really fast and sometimes it's not. But several years ago, I used to go to the gym at Gold's Gym at about 6 o'clock in the morning, and I went with a bunch of guys that I went to church with here. Danny Dorsey was one of them. And so a bunch of us church guys decided we're going to go to the gym every morning at 6 o'clock in the morning. And if you've ever been to a gym at 6 o'clock in the morning, it's a pretty serious situation there, because the people that get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym are usually serious about working out. They're not there to just pick up on chicks and stuff like they are at 5 o'clock when you go there, and it's like a little meat market area. So at at that time in the morning, it's pretty serious. So everybody's working out and things are going strong. They got the music on and the TVs, right? If you've ever been in one of those places, they got all the TVs up with videos and all this stuff. And we noticed this very strange phenomenon, and this will date the story based on the song and stuff, but everybody would be working out, everything would be going strong and everything, and all of a sudden, this music video would come on, and it was Jessica Simpson, from the Dukes of Hazzard video, and she's like tramping around in her little tiny short shorts and her tall boots and stuff, and the entire gym would just come to a screeching halt, and everybody's just staring at the monitor like, oh, Jessica. Yeah, and so it was just like the strangest thing, like all of a sudden everybody's like just in full, just like, mode. And so, nobody planned when they showed up at the gym that morning. By the time I leave here, I'm definitely be fantasizing about Jessica Simpson, right? I mean, nobody thought that when they walked in, but somehow it just happens. I mean, it happened that fast where you're just tempted by this whole, and I think Danny even said, he's like, that is from the devil, right? I mean, it's like, there's no way that could be good for us to be participating, watching, or anything like that. So, I mean, it just happens that fast. And so, because we're such sinful creatures, we just have to be real careful about, the temptations that we face. So, first thing I want to tell you is about, in the chapter, James, he wrote this great little thing about temptation and sin. And so James 1:13 through 15 is probably in your bulletin there, not up on the screen. And it says, when tempted, no one should say, God is tempting me. For God cannot be tempted by evil, nor does he tempt anyone. But each person is tempted when they are dragged away by their own evil desire and enticed. Then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. So he kind of just tells a story of our own little sinful things happen, and then all of a sudden it turns into what was temptation is now full-blown sin. And then when it turns into full-blown sin, it ultimately happens into death. And so death is kind of a strange word, and so let me just be clear on death. Death is not always just death like, hey, I'm going to die if I sin. Death is really the idea of death to things around you. So it's death to relationships, it's death to your dreams, death to your career, death to your family. Just that destruction of everything that's good and joyful around you. That's what sin is ultimately going to end up taking, is all of that when sin becomes death. So don't, when it says death, it's not just you're going to die if you sin, which I'd like you to believe anyway, but it's really just about, bad things are going to happen and destruction's going to come because of that. So I want to tell you this sad story tonight. It's kind of this weird, sad story in the Bible, and it happens in Genesis, and it's a story I heard Perry Noble preach on, and when he told it, I'm like, man, I've read that section of the Bible a bunch. I never really put all those pieces together. So I thought I'd kind of show you, and what we're going to talk about is just how this temptation at the very beginning can lead you through all these stages of sin and really what's going to happen. So before we get started, we're going to talk about Abram, which ultimately becomes Abraham. Everybody heard of Abraham in the Bible? Abraham, yes, Father Abraham, many people, all that. So Abraham had this nephew named Lot. And so that's who we're going to talk about tonight is Abraham and Lot. So it goes like this. Really, Abraham is blessed by God. At that point, he was called Abram, but he is blessed by God, right? He has flocks and gold and riches. And because Lot is hanging around with Abraham, he becomes blessed too. And so all of a sudden, Lot starts gathering flocks and gold and riches and all this stuff. It's funny, life is really still like that. I mean, they talk about this in Genesis, but one of the things I've learned through financial counseling and all that is your salary and your income usually gravitates towards your 3 closest friends. So if you hang out with a bunch of people that make, $20,000 a year, you're probably going to end up making $20,000 a year. But if you try to hang out with people that make a lot of money, usually you kind of gravitate towards them too. And that's really what happened between Lot and Abram, is Lot was kind of hanging out with Abram, God was blessing Abram, so it kind of just overflowed onto Lot. And so everything was going fine, and God had given Abram all this land and said, you have all this land open to you now, you can settle anywhere you want. But there was this problem going on where Lot and Abram's servants were fighting and arguing with each other. I mean, I don't know if they're going like, I got more sheep than you do. I'm not sure exactly what was going on there. But I definitely know it's a rich people problem when your servants are fighting with each other, right? That's definitely a rich people problem. I'll probably never have that problem. So they finally decided they're going to just like move to a different part of the land. And so, it's kind of the backstory of kind of what's happening here. So the first thing we're going to talk about is really the first 4 stages of sin. And so the first stage of sin is flirtation. Flirtation, number 1, filling in your thing there. I probably don't have to explain to this group what flirting is. I think some of you could probably teach a class. Maybe you could tell me some things about flirting afterwards. You probably know more than I do. I'm not going to call out any names, but there's definitely a few of you. So, the funny thing of flirting is one of those things where you're really trying to see how close you can get to something without maybe crossing that line. I think I don't know if girls are as bad as guys, but traditionally guys are real bad about once they get a girlfriend, they find it really fun to flirt with other girls just to kind of make sure they still got it. And just kind of see, I don't want to hook up with them, but see how close I can get. I still have my girlfriend, I still love her, but I'm still going to flirt just a little bit, kind of see what can happen just in case. The air conditioner scared me. All right, so maybe the example is, for flirting is, I don't know if any of you ever did this, but perhaps this is something that your parents said, you should absolutely not touch this. Whatever you do not touch this. And so what do you do as a kid? You're like, maybe, right? As close as you can get. I'm not touching it. I'm not touching it. I'm just kind of being near it, right? That's kind of flirting, right? You're kind of flirting with disaster there, and the fact that you're just trying to see just how close you can really get to it without touching it. So you got to be careful about the flirtation is really that, let's see how close I can get without really getting in trouble. And that's kind of what Lot's going to start off here with. So, in Genesis 13:12, it says, and this is not in your outline, so you have to look up here. It says, Abram lived in the land of Canaan, while Lot lived among the cities of the plain and pitched his tents near Sodom. He pitched his tents near Sodom. Now the people of Sodom were wicked, and were sinning greatly against the Lord. So here's Lot, and he's like, Abram's like, go anywhere you want, just move away from me, you're driving me crazy, your servants are fighting with my servants. So Lot's like, I'm going to go live over here and pitch my tent near Sodom. I'm not going to partake in what they're doing over there. I mean, I hear they're doing wicked, evil things that God doesn't like. But I am kind of interested in what's going on there. So I'm just going to pitch my tents near there and just kind of, I'll keep an eye on it, but I'm definitely not going to get involved, right? I'm just going to kind of see what's going on, but I'll just be near Sodom. And so the next stage of sin that we kind of roll into is the rationalization stage. And this is so easy, and often you'll catch yourself, or you'll definitely catch a friend kind of rationalizing behavior, right? It's so easy to rationalize away your sins. I know a perfect example a lot of times, especially in today's culture, is you talk to 2 young people that, grew up in church, and then you find out they're living together. You're like, well, I thought you weren't supposed to live together until you were married, because traditionally if you're living together, you're having sex. You probably shouldn't be living together, right? Because, you went to church all these years, and they're like, well, we've been going out for so long, and we spent so much time at each other's houses, and it just made more sense for us just to live together. Or, it's just cheaper. He had his rent, I had my rent, so we just live together because it's cheaper. We're not doing it to try to sin against God, it's just cheaper. And so it's so easy to rationalize everything you do. I notice this a lot, usually people that having issues with drugs or alcohol. Usually the first thing they want to do to rationalize it, they want to take the focus off them. It's like, yeah, I know I drink on the weekends with my friends, but I don't drink nearly as much as Steve does. I mean, you should see Steve. That guy's just hammered all the time, right? And so they go through this rationalization phase of, well, I may be sinning, but I'm not as bad as somebody else, or I'm not doing this. You know, they just rationalize it in their mind. And so you got to be careful about that whole rationalization thing, because we're in America, and if you have an addiction, there is a support group to support your addiction, right? I mean, it doesn't matter what you do. It's like, you know, people that like to pet cats in the dark, there's a support group for that, right? I mean, there's like support groups for everything nowadays. And so what we're going to do is let's catch up and see what's going on with Sodom. So Sodom had pitched his tents near the place there. And so what happened is there was this war. And there was 5 kingdoms versus 4 kingdoms. And these kings were clashing and having this war. Well, the 4 kingdoms beat the 5 kingdoms. And Sodom and Gomorrah were 2 of those kingdoms that got beat. And so the 4 kings won the war. And so in Genesis 14:11 it says, the 4 kings seized all the goods of Sodom and Gomorrah and all their food. Then they went away. They also carried off Abram's nephew Lot and his possessions, since he was living in Sodom. Now wait a second, I thought Sodom was living just outside the city. Why is it just a couple of chapters later now he's living in Sodom? I kind of have this vision of Sodom rationalizing what happened. He's like, you know, I think if you asked him, it's like, Sodom, why are you living in Sodom? Right? I mean, you said it was bad. There's like, well, what? Did I say something wrong? Sodom? Sorry. So Lot's living in Sodom, and so I think if you went and asked Lot, you're like, Lot, I thought you were going to live in Sodom. You know, what happened is they're doing all these wicked things there. I'm sure he's like, well, my kids go to Sodom High School, and my wife shops at the Sodom Publix, and you know, there's a lot of commuting traffic back and forth. It was just easier to live in Sodom than it was to live outside. But don't worry, I'm not partaking in what's going on here. I'm just living in Sodom because it's easier, right? I mean, it just makes more sense than living outside in the tent. So here's Lot kind of, as far as I'm concerned, rationalizing, you know, he's why he's all of a sudden in Sodom and what's happening there. So, what's the third stage of sin? The third stage of sin is transformation. And this is really where the sin really starts to take part of you, and it becomes kind of who you are and what you're about. I think, you know, you guys, most of you are in high school, a lot of you are in middle school. I think everybody can point out one person in their high school that you just think of as, oh, that's the guy that gets drunk every weekend, right? I mean, that's kind of their identity. Their sin is so big, it becomes their identity. That guy's a pothead, you know, that girl's a slut, whatever it is, their sin is so big that it really becomes their entire identity, because that's all anybody, it's just transformed them into this totally different person. That's all anybody sees is the sin, not the person anymore. It's just completely transformed them. And this can go really fast where it transforms you, or it can be a real slow, long process. But ultimately, if you continue in sin, it's going to transform you, and you're going to have this transformation. So, we'll go back to the story of Lot here in a second. But so really what happened next is Abram went and rescued Lot from the kings and said, oh, I'm sorry, Lot. Well, Lot wasn't one of them, and kind of gathered him back up. And so, you know, everything was fine, and Abram kind of fixed it. Well, then God decides that he's had enough of this Sodom and Gomorrah places where all these wicked things are, and he's just going to destroy the cities, absolutely destroy the cities. So he decides he's just going to send 2 angels into the city. So we'll start at Genesis 19:1, which is up on the screen. It says, the 2 angels arrived at Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. That doesn't look like anything I'm reading. So Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. And I want to stop real quick at that, because in those days, the only people that sat in the gateway of the city were the leaders of the city. That was kind of this place of power and importance. If you were one of the leaders of a city, you would kind of sit in the gateway and the entrance so that anybody who was coming to the city could kind of see who the leaders were, and you could kind of, keep track of what was going on. So now all of a sudden, Lot has become one of the leaders of Sodom. And so these two angels arrive in Sodom. And so it says, the two angels arrived in Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gateway of the city. When he saw them, he got up to meet them and bowed down with his face to the ground. So although Sodom is leading this city full of sinners, he acts very reverent when he sees the angels. I would hope, right? So he puts his face to the ground and all this. He says, "My lords," he said, "please turn aside to your servant's house. You can wash your feet and spend the night and then go on your way in the morning." "No," they answered, "we will spend the night in the square so we can kind of see what's going on in the city." But he insisted so strongly that they did go with him and entered his house. He prepared a meal for them, baking bread without yeast, and they ate. Before they had gone to bed, all the men from every part of the city of Sodom, both young and old, surrounded the house. They called to Lot, "Where are the men that came to you tonight? Bring them out to us so we can have sex with them." So, that's what's going down in Sodom, right? This is a gang of every man and woman in this, or man and boy in the city, and the only thing on their mind at this point is gang rape of these two visitors that have come into the city. Now, I don't make the best choices picking friends, but if I'm meeting somebody, I'm like, "Hey, what are you doing this weekend?" And they're like, "Gang rape." I'm like, I'm out. I'm not going to be part of that situation. So you got to watch out for kind of, what's going on. And so this is a bad situation, right? So Lot's in there with the angels trying to be good and stuff. And here's every man and boy in the city standing outside like, "We want to have sex with them. We want to have sex with them." Right? That's probably not good, right? So this is the best part. So Lot goes outside to meet them and shuts the door behind him. So he runs outside and he says, "Now my friends," his friends, they want to gang rape these people. And, "Oh, my friends," right? "My friends, don't do this wicked thing. Look, I have two daughters who have never been slept with a man. Let me bring them out to you and you can do what you like to them. But don't do anything to these men, for they have come under the protection of my roof." I don't think this is Father of the Year material, right? I can't imagine me girls thinking, "Dad, that doesn't sound like good." When your dad offers you up for gang rape, things are going bad at this point, right? Absolutely bad. But the scary part is this is where the transformation has happened. Lot has been living in this situation for so long that all of a sudden a logical decision sounds like offering up his daughters for gang rape. Because that just makes sense. He's rationalized it. He's been transformed. That just seems like almost a good idea now. I'm not sure why it's better than letting the angels take care of it, but for some reason, he's been transformed and now he thinks that this is a good idea. So, look at the path Lot is on and kind of sliding down this bad road. So let's move on to the fourth stage of sin, and that is destruction. So at the beginning of my message, I quoted James, and it said, "Sin gives birth to death." And this is really where I was talking about is sin leads to destruction of everything that's going on around you. And so right now we're kind of in this story of Lot, who was blessed and doing really well. And then he decided to move next to Sodom. Then he moved into Sodom. Then he was leading Sodom. Now he's offering up his daughters for gang rape, right? Destruction, it seems like a pretty good path where he's headed, right? So what happened next was the angels convinced Lot, hey, let's not offer up your daughters to gang rape. I got a better idea. So they blinded the people so they couldn't find the door. Told Lot, take your daughters and your wife, leave this city, we'll protect you, just get out of here. They kind of, we're not sure if we want to leave. What? You're not sure if you want to leave? And so they finally decided they want to leave. And so, yeah, you're way too far ahead. And so he couldn't decide, what to do. And so ultimately he decides he just needs to leave. And so as they're leaving, his wife has second thoughts and is like, oh, maybe we should stay. And she gets turned into a pillar of salt and dies. And so, because she thinks she needs to stay in Sodom for some reason, so it's not going well. So let's go to Genesis 19 and 30, and it says, listen up. Lot and his two daughters left Zoar, which is where they kind of ran to, and settled in the mountains, for he was afraid to stay in Zoar. He and his two daughters lived in a cave. One day the older daughter said to the younger, our father is old and there is no man around here to give us children as is custom all over the earth. Let's get our father to drink wine and then sleep with them and preserve our family line through our father. That night they got their father to drink wine, and the older daughter went in and slept with him. He was not aware of it when she lay down or when she got up. The next day the older daughter said to the younger, last night I slept with my father. Let's get him to drink wine again tonight so you can go in and sleep with him so we can preserve our family line through our father. This plan can't fail. Again, he was not aware of it when she lay down and when she got up. So both of Lot's daughters became pregnant by their father. So this isn't like the Walt Disney fairy tale ending, right? This is not happily ever after type of stuff going on, right? And so this is destruction, right? I mean, this is completely destroyed this family to the point where they started off, everything was great, we're blessed. We moved near Sodom, we moved into Sodom. We offered up our kids for gang rape. We decided to leave, my wife dies. Now my daughter's getting me drunk and having sex with me. I mean, things aren't going well for Lot down this path. And I think it also shows the transformation that happened to those daughters while they lived in Sodom, that all of a sudden they think this is a good idea too, right? If you lived in Sodom so long, you're like, I'll sleep with my dad, that's not a bad deal. Better than gang rape, I guess. And so, they head down this path. So if we go back to that verse again with James, it says, then, after desire has conceived, it gives birth to sin. And sin, when it is full grown, gives birth to death. So maybe you're sitting here thinking, Brandon, this is a great story, a little graphic for me. But what if I'm already in a sinful situation? What if I'm already doing things that are affecting my life? Maybe you already have a problem with drugs, or maybe you're already having sex, or maybe you have a problem with pornography, or maybe you're drinking, or swearing, or cutting, or you're a chronic liar, or something like that. How do you get away from that sin if you're already headed down that path and you don't want destruction? If you want to stay away from that path of sin and stay away from going in full destruction, how do you escape that sin maybe you're already in? So let's talk about how to escape sin. And the first one is confess to God. The first way to escape sin is you have to confess your sins to God. And the idea is God already knows that you sin, so you're not telling him anything new. You need to go to God with a broken heart and be like, God, I do not want to do this anymore. I need your help to stop doing it. I need your help because I don't want to do it anymore, but I don't know how to stop. I need your help. That is the confession to God. It's not just a, hey God, I know you saw that, so sorry about that. It's got to be a serious, your heart is broken over it, you're asking God for help. That is your confession to God. 1 John 1-9 says, if we confess our sins, he is faithful and just and will forgive us our sins and purify us from all unrighteousness. Last night I got to go to the Winter Jam concert, and yeah, it was awesome. And McCrae said something that was so great, I immediately pulled out my phone and wrote it down. I thought it was so great. He said, "There is always enough grace today to cover yesterday's mistakes." And that is just something that's so great. So no matter where you're